So, yesterday we stopped here and reiterated that we're talking about two unknown numbers. So you have x plus y equals 16. And then it says you had x squared plus y squared equals 130. Okay, like before we saw systems, you want to get one variable by itself. So we're going to let y equal 16 minus x. We're going to substitute that in for y. So where there's a y, so now we're down to x squared plus 16 minus x squared equals 130. Okay, from there, we're going to have to distribute and combine like terms. Distributing means because there's a square means that there's two of these, right? So it's 16 minus x times 16 minus x. After you distribute, you're going to be left with x squared plus 256 minus 32x plus x squared equals 130. 16 times 16 is 256. 16 negative x plus negative 16x equals negative 32x, and a negative x times a negative x makes a positive x squared. Then you're going to combine your like terms. So my like terms here are 1x squared, and 1x squared makes 2x squared. I'm going to put it in order. Minus 32x plus 256 equals 130. Now it's just a quadratic that you're going to simplify. So in order to solve quadratics, remember this must equal 0. How do I make this equal to 0? Subtract 130. So when I subtract 130, I'm left with 2x squared minus 32x plus 126 equals 0. Next, you're going to check for a GCF. Is there a greatest common factor? 2. So everything is divided by 2. I'm going to move my work over here so you can see. After dividing everything by 2, we're left with x squared minus 16x plus 63 equals 0. So you're asking yourself what multiplies to give you 63, but adds to give you negative 16. And that would be x equals x minus 7 and x minus 9. And that is why mathematically x equals 7 and x equals 9 are your magic numbers. Okay. In my opinion, this is a problem that is, if you think about it just for a little bit, you should be able to decipher the numbers with a little guessing and checking. But if the numbers got really big, that's where the quadratic formula would come into play. Does that make sense? 7 and 9 were pretty small, not that terrible to realize. But here's the math board. Yes.
I just did a reasonable thinking. That's all.
That's what I just said. This one you probably couldn't guess and check. Yeah. Thank you for confirming my logic. All right, 7. On 7. This is a simple word problem. A roofer drops a hammer from the top of a 64-foot roof. The height of the hammer after t seconds is given by h equals negative 16t squared plus 64. When will the hammer hit the ground? Okay, so going back and marking our text, important information is the equation. The 64 is accounted for in the equation, right? When will the hammer hit the ground? If I'm looking for hitting the ground, that means h has to equal what? 0. So it's asking when negative 16t squared plus 64 equals 0. It is basic physics. All right. So just like before, you want to solve for t. What are the steps to get t by itself? What's the first thing I need to do? Minus the 64. So I'm going to subtract 64, and I'm going to be left with negative 16t squared equals negative 64. Now, what's the next thing I need to do to get t by itself? Divide by what? Negative 16, right? I'm going to divide both sides by negative 16, and we're left with t squared equals positive 4. What's the last thing we need to do to get t by itself? You're going to take the square root. So we get t equals plus or minus 2. So positive or negative 2. Because this is a real world situation, will you have negative time?
No.
No. So for this problem, how long will it take for it to hit the ground? 2 seconds. Okay, you could have also solved this by factoring, by taking out the GCF and setting t squared minus 4 equal to 0 as well. All right, lastly is just labeling of a triangle. I'm going to pause and let you read and label the triangle. So read and label the triangle. All right, let's see how you label your triangle. It says you have a right triangle, correct?
Yep.
And that right triangle has a hypotenuse. And it says your hypotenuse is 6 inches more than your shorter leg. So you have your shorter leg and your hypotenuse is 6 inches more. And then your longer leg is 3 inches more than your shorter leg. So your long leg equals your shorter leg plus 3. So that's all the size you can give, right? Well, here's your new information. The perimeter equals 27 inches. Yep. So if my perimeter is 27 inches, what are the sides of my triangle? Perimeter. What do you do with perimeter? Add them all together. Add up all your sides. And tell me what S is. I'm going to test something out. All right. So perimeter. Think about perimeter. Perimeter means that you add up all your sides, right? So if I was add up all the sides, it's S plus 3 plus S plus 6, correct? Equals 27. You have 1S, 2S, 3S. So that's 3S plus 9 equals 27. You subtract your 9, and you're left with 3S equals 18. You divide your 3, so S would have to equal 6, right? So if I plug that in, S is 6 here. That means that H equals 12. S is what here? 9. So length would equal 9. Now, this is the question. It says that this is a right triangle. Do these numbers make sense for a right triangle? What has to be true about a right triangle? What is it? Right triangles, a squared plus b squared has to equal c squared. So does 9 squared plus 6 squared equal 12 squared?
Yeah.
Do the math. Test it out. Does 9 squared plus 6 squared equal 12 squared? What do we get?
117.
It doesn't, right? So these values wouldn't make true that these are values of a right triangle. No, because in order to be a right triangle, that has to hold true. Does that make sense? So if we chose these values, we're like, oh, well, the perimeter does not work because that cannot be a right triangle, right? So the perimeter that they gave us, or I gave you intentionally to make you check yourself, would not work, right? And that's because it would not make it a right triangle. So in this situation, if it's asking you to find the lengths of all 3 sides, because it is a right triangle, it would expect you to use the fact that you know that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So without having any other information, you could calculate what s is. Does that make sense? You would have done s squared plus s plus 3 squared equals s plus 6 squared. Okay. This is an example of where you didn't need perimeter or area in order to solve. You just need to realize that you're working with a right triangle. And then you would go through the math and then find the real value of your S. Okay. Because of right triangles, I can't just say, oh, your perimeter is. Now, if the word right wasn't there, we would be golden. Does that make sense? But because it says right triangle, we would have to use our knowledge of a squared plus b squared equals c squared and solve from there. Okay. So that's the setup. And give it a shot. Foil, distribute, whatever you want to call it, and figure out what S would actually have to be in order for this to work. Because giving you a perimeter does not satisfy what needs to be satisfied. Nope. Nope. Let's see how we did. So we talked about we didn't need perimeter or area. The fact that it told us it was a right triangle, we needed to just remember Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And we're gonna plug in everything. A, will let be our shorter leg, which is gonna be S. B squared will let it be our longer leg, which is be S plus 3 squared. And C squared is gonna be our hypotenuse, which is gonna be S plus 6 squared. Okay, you're gonna go through and distribute. So again, when there's a square, that means that there is two of them, right? So just your shortcut for squares. When you have a square, you're gonna square the first term, so that gives you S squared. You're gonna square the second term, that's gonna give you 9. And you're going to double the middle after the product of the middle of the product of the two terms. So you have 3 and S, and what's 3 times 2? So that gives you 6S. That's if you don't want to do the full FOIL. That's just a little shortcut. S times S squared is going to be S squared. 6 squared is going to be 36. And double their product is going to give us 12S. Okay? In order to solve a quadratic, you have to have everything on one side, and one side needs to be equal to 0. So I'm going to combine first. Well, right here, if I have an S squared on the left and the right side, what does that do? It eliminates, right? So now I'm going to subtract 36, combine with 9. I'm going to subtract 12S and combine with 6S. Now that side is going to be equal to 0. And on this side, I'm left with S squared minus 12S. No, I can do math. Minus 9. I can't talk. Minus 6. 6 minus 12 is negative 6. We all know that. What is wrong, Shauna? And then 9 minus 36. You have $9 and you spend 36. Your bank account now has a negative balance of 27 equals 0. So now it comes down to you asking yourself, what multiplies to give me negative 27? What adds to give me negative 6? What two numbers? What? Negative 9 and 3, yes. S minus 9 and S minus plus 3. So therefore, what are your possible side lengths? S equals negative 3 and S equals positive 9. Can you have a negative side length? No, so that's not our possibility. So what has to be our side length? 9. So our short leg is 9, which makes our hypotenuse what? 15, Ms. Jones. Oh, you're so smart. And then for our long leg is 12. And you can check yourself. Okay, so did y'all see how we checked ourselves? This time it all works. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared holds down. So for right triangles, can you just be given a perimeter and say, make it work? No, you need to just use the fact that A squared plus B squared equals C squared, and that is it.